For thousands of people, it was just another day, another train ticket. They were heading home, starting a vacation, or visiting loved ones. As they settled into their seats, the rumble of the engine and the gentle sway of the carriage were familiar, comforting sounds. It was the sound of progress, of connection, of a world in motion. But the physics of that motion can be terrifyingly unforgiving. The same weight and speed that make trains a marvel of engineering can also turn them into instruments of unimaginable destruction. For the people aboard these particular trains, the journey would be their last. They didn't know it, but they'd boarded a one-way trip to disaster. They were inside a rolling coffin that would soon become a permanent tomb, etched into history as one of the deadliest traps ever made of iron and steel. From the crushing power of nature to the smallest of human errors. These are the stories of when the journey ended in catastrophe. December 26, 2004. It was the day after Christmas and a Buddhist full moon holiday in Sri Lanka. Train number 50, the Queen of the Sea, was making its regular run from the capital, Colombo, down the scenic southwestern coast to the city of Gal. The 8 carriages were packed way beyond capacity, with over 1,500 ticket holders and many more traveling without them. The mood was festive, the aisles filled with families and holiday travelers. The train chugged alongside the coastline, at some points just a couple hundred meters from the sparkling Indian Ocean. At 9:28 a.m., near the village of Paralia, the train suddenly stopped. Passengers looked out the windows. They saw people on the shore screaming, running away from the sea. Then they saw why. A wall of water was racing towards them. The first wave, part of the great Indian Ocean tsunami, slammed into the train, lifting carriages and flooding them with incredible force. Some passengers scrambled onto the roof, thinking they'd be safer on top of the heavy steel cars, but that hope was short-lived. A second, much larger wave followed. It was estimated to be up to 30 feet high, tall enough to completely swallow the train. The sheer force of the water ripped the massive carriages from the tracks, smashing them against trees and buildings. The locomotive was thrown 330 feet, landing in a swamp. Inside the cars, it was a scene of absolute horror. The carriages were so overcrowded that in the panic, the doors couldn't be opened. As water filled every inch of space, there was no escape. Those who had sought refuge on the roof were swept away, either drowned or crushed by debris. In the hours that followed, there was only silence. Sri Lankan authorities had no idea what happened to the train until a military helicopter spotted the wreckage around 4 p.m. Rescue efforts were severely hampered because the tsunami had destroyed everything in the area. When help finally arrived, the scale of the tragedy was incomprehensible. The estimated death toll ranges from 1,000 to over 1,700 people, making it the single deadliest train disaster in all of recorded history. Only about 150 people on board survived. For hundreds of victims, their bodies were never recovered from the sea, and they were buried in mass graves, their identities lost to the waves. Decades earlier, in the middle of World War I, another journey home turned into a nightmare. On the night of December 12, 1917, a military train, M612, was packed with over 1,000 French soldiers. They were on a 15-day leave from the Italian front, exhausted but filled with the joy of seeing their families for Christmas. The train itself was a disaster waiting to happen. Because of wartime shortages, it was dangerously overloaded. 19 wooden-bodied cars of Italian make, coupled to a single engine. The train's engineer actually refused to take it at first, protesting that its weight was far too great for the treacherous mountain descent ahead. But when a military officer threatened him with disciplinary action, he reluctantly agreed. As the train left Modan and began its descent into the Maurienne Valley, the engineer's fears became a terrifying reality. The train's brakes, which were only air-powered on the first few cars and manually operated on the rest, were totally inadequate. They quickly overheated and failed. The train started to accelerate uncontrollably down the steep grade. Inside, the soldiers' celebrations grew quiet as the train picked up terrifying speed. It was soon careening down the mountain at over 80 miles per hour, on a track rated for just 25. As it entered a sharp curve just outside the Saint-Michel-de-Maurienne station, the lead carriage derailed. What followed was a catastrophic pileup. The wooden cars, flimsy and packed with men, smashed into one another, splintering into a heap of debris. The horror was then made worse by fire. The wreckage ignited from the red-hot brakes and the candles the soldiers had been using for light. And to make things even worse, many soldiers were carrying unauthorized grenades, which began to explode in the inferno. The fire burned all through the night and into the next day. Due to wartime censorship, the French government suppressed news of the disaster. It remains the deadliest railway accident in French history. The official death toll stands at 435, though unofficial estimates place it as high as 800. Only about 432 bodies could even be identified from the charred remains. For the soldiers who had survived the trenches, their journey home became their final, fiery resting place, a catastrophe born from military pressure and mechanical failure. Less than a year later, on the morning of July 9, 1918, the United States would have its own deadliest rail disaster. This time, the cause wasn't a tsunami or a catastrophic brake failure, but a simple, fatal human error. In Nashville, Tennessee, two passenger trains run by the Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis Railway were on a collision course. Train number 4 was heading west from Nashville to Memphis. At the same time, train number 1 was heading east from Memphis. Running about 30 minutes late, the railway was using a timetable and train order system on a single track, with no automatic signals to prevent a crash. This single-track section, a bottleneck known as Dutchman's Curve, was where the disaster happened. Somehow, the crew of the outbound number 4 train completely forgot about the inbound, delayed number 1 train, which had the right-of-way. They passed a critical stop and kept going on to the single track. At around 7:20 a.m., the two trains met head-on at a combined speed of over 100 miles per hour. The impact was described as a thunderous boom that could be heard for miles. Both locomotives were destroyed, but the real devastation was in the passenger cars behind them. At the time, most of the cars were still made of wood. The wooden carriages shattered like matchsticks. They telescoped into each other, crushing and trapping hundreds of passengers. Many of the victims were African-American laborers, traveling to a new munitions plant to help with the war effort. The aftermath was a horrifying scene of splintered wood and twisted metal. Rescuers worked for hours to pull the living and the dead from the wreckage. In total, the Great Train Wreck of 1918 claimed at least 101 lives and injured another 171. The official investigation placed the blame squarely on human error. The crew of train number 4 had simply failed to follow the rules. This horrific and completely avoidable accident highlighted the dangers of wooden passenger cars and forced railroads across America to slowly phase out the rolling tinder boxes for all steel cars. From a towering tsunami wave to a runaway military convoy to a fatal lapse in memory, these tragedies span the globe and the decades. They were caused by the overwhelming forces of nature, by mechanical failure under extreme stress, and by simple human error. Each disaster in its own terrible way served as a brutal lesson. The lives lost in Sri Lanka were a tragic reminder that no machine can withstand the full force of nature. The inferno at Saint-Michel-de-Maurienne showed the deadly consequences of putting military needs over safety. And the collision at Dutchman's Curve became a catalyst for change, pushing an entire industry towards steel carriages and better signal systems. These iron giants, once symbols of ingenuity, became monuments to tragedy. The stories of those who died inside them are a somber legacy, a permanent reminder of the thin line between a routine journey and a one-way ticket to disaster. The history of how we travel is filled with stories of both triumph and tragedy. If you want to see more deep dives into the events that shaped our world, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, and let us know in the comments which historical events you think we should cover next. Thanks for watching.